Hello, I'm Donna Brown with the Florida Institute for Child Welfare, and today we're speaking to Karen Oehme, who is the director of the Institute of Family Violence Studies at Florida State University College of Social Work. And today, or actually the whole month of October, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we are highlighting the Supervised Visitation Program. They operate throughout the state to serve families with child welfare involvement. Karen Oehme is an expert on supervised visitation programs, as the Institute operates the clearinghouse on supervised visitation. Really, you provide statewide technical assistance on issues related to the delivery of supervised visitation services to providers, the judiciary, and the Florida Department of Children and Families. So thank you for taking the time today for this interview, and thank you for having me. And I'd really like to know just a little bit about yourself and the work that you do at FSU.
Sure. So I am the director of the Institute. I'm the third director. The first was Sharon Maxwell Ferguson, and the second was Dr. Wendy Crook, and I'm the third. And the Institute specializes in lots of online training on topics that are related to child welfare and family violence studies. And really the flagship program of the Institute has been the Clearinghouse on Supervised Visitation since about 1996. So a long time, funded through the Department of Children and Families here in Florida. And we have other projects too. We work on issues related to law enforcement and domestic violence, human trafficking trainings. We have in-house, we have the FSU Student Resilience Project that deals with issues of trauma and resilience. But the clearinghouse has sort of been my baby since about 1998 when I came on board here at Florida State.
That's amazing. What is the history just of supervised visitation programs?
Sure, that's a very good question. Visitation programs have been around since about the 1980s, so in a way that's sort of a relatively new social service. To provide a way for children to have contact with a non-custodial parent in a safe setting. And in Florida, we are, so the Clearinghouse on Supervised Visitation is written into Florida Statute 753, named as the entity that provides the technical assistance and the training and the directories and the data on supervised visitation in Florida. So every county in Florida, every judicial circuit in Florida, I should say, every judicial circuit in Florida has at least one supervised visitation program, and they may also have what's called monitored exchange, and that's an exchange in custody from parenting time from one parent to the other, where the child travels back and forth to spend time with the other parent when there are allegations and concerns about serious issues like domestic violence.
And is the idea of supervised visitation programs, was that kind of a grassroots idea?
It was a grassroots idea. We didn't start in Florida, so there are visitation programs all around the United States. And they developed in response to the need for a safe place for kids to maintain a relationship with their children while there are very serious concerns about mental illness, about substance abuse, about domestic violence.
And we know that domestic violence and child maltreatment frequently co-occur. And I wonder how many, or do you know how many children with histories of domestic violence in their families are served by the...
So we have, in Florida, we keep data about referrals to supervised visitation programs.
Mm-hmm.
And about 30% of the cases sent to supervised visitation programs originate within domestic violence cases. So within the injunction for protection against domestic violence. But there are cases that originate out of divorce pleadings. There are cases that come from Chapter 39, right? So your abuse and neglect cases. But those can have domestic violence too, as you just stated that there is an overlap. There's often an overlap. Not always. And then we have some criminal cases too, cases that originate in criminal court where the child has been visiting with the parent at the visitation program while there's a criminal case ongoing against the parent.
Right. So in that case, judges are tending to make the
yes. So the vast majority of the cases that go to supervised visitation originate in court orders. So even if they are Chapter 39 cases and child maltreatment cases, they're still signed off on by the judge, by the court. So the cases originate in court orders.
And what kind of support can the supervised visitation program offer, children and family members with history?
Sure. Well, that's a really good and important question. So the number one benefit of a supervised visitation program in a domestic violence case is safety. Of course, the most important issue in DV cases is going to be safety of the child, the children, and of the vulnerable parent. So just making sure that the vulnerable parent does not have to then interact with the batterer, does not have to justify her decisions to the batterer, that there's no arguing about the children with the batterer, that's all sort of taken away. That control has sort of been taken away from the batterer. And the visitation program arranges the contact. And basically the hope is that never the twain shall meet at the visitation program. Lots of visitation programs have separate entrances and exits. Some have separate parking lots for the petitioners and for the respondents in these DV injunction cases. And then there is a controlled environment, and that's really important, where this is another set of eyes and ears of the court. So what happens in supervised visitation is a transparent process that the court knows about. There are no secrets. Parents can't whisper secrets to their kids. And so I think what happens is you have this very highly controlled environment that ensures at least a minimum level of safety for the kids and for that vulnerable parent, and takes that vulnerable parent out of the disputes over the kids.
And I would think for many of the children, they still want that contact with the officer.
So the truth, and we've learned this over the years, is that the child just wants the violence to stop. Like, they still want the parent, but they want the violence to stop. And we don't have a magic wand, but we can at least set up that controlled environment. We can help prevent stalking, which is a very big issue in cases of recent breakups. Right, this whole issue of the loss of control that a perpetrator has when there's been a separation, and the heightened possibility of separation violence. We're very aware of that dynamic in DV cases.
And I know that you're a researcher. I actually read much of your work. Encourage anybody to Google it because it's very interesting. And I wonder what the research is telling us about the effectiveness of supervised visitation programs.
So, and that's a good question. And the research that we have done has been really around who is sending cases to supervised visitation and for what reasons. So we know from the data that the majority of cases come because of substance abuse, mental illness, and domestic violence. We do know that violence in the family does decrease when the case is sent to supervised visitation. You have fewer reports to the police. You have fewer encounters and dangerous situations. Mm-hmm. But we also know that supervised visitation is not a cure for the domestic violence in the case. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to distinguish that for your viewers, that it's not a cure. It is basically a hold. Mm-hmm. Right? So the case is sort of stopped and the contact is continued in a safe setting while other types of treatment and other approaches and other types of redress are put into effect in the case. So supervised visitation doesn't end the domestic violence.
We'll take other services.
That's right. With batterers intervention programs, right, and other interventions that may include substance abuse counseling and batterers intervention and individual treatment, and things like that. And that's not the role of the visitation program.
And in your opinion, so what are the best ways that we can support children who lived in homes where there was violence? I know that you know a lot just about family violence.
Right.
And what are the most effective ways that we can support children?
So, of course, the very first way that we can support children is by ensuring that they can be raised and nurtured by the nonviolent parent, right? Mm-hmm. So that's super important that we end that cycle of violence. We end the violence for that child. But then once that violence has been stopped, and that's a big task in itself, mm-hmm. there are things that we can do to help kids sort of regain their sense of trust. Mm-hmm. And regain their sense of security and regain their sense of sort of faith in the world. Mm-hmm. But that's after the violence has been stopped. We know from neuroscience, I mean, this is one of the cutting issues of our time, that when children suffer from adverse childhood experiences like witnessing domestic violence, mm-hmm. that it can actually interfere with their developing brains. That it can actually interfere with the neurons that make up the frontal lobe of their brains, right? The parts that regulate executive function and decision making and risk taking, and so what research tells us is, first of all, if we can get the child out of the violent situation, we can make the violence stop, and the child can be nurtured by the nonviolent parent, mm-hmm. then there are lots of opportunities to build resilience in that child. There's mm-hmm. lots of opportunities, just as bad experiences, negative experiences can negatively affect the brain, positive experiences can positively affect the brain. So we know that there's hope for healing at every stage of life. And I think what's really important in the time of the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, right, mm-hmm. is that we have made progress in the awareness in the community about the scourge of domestic violence. And people do realize that it's not good for kids, mm-hmm. and that we have to protect vulnerable parents. And that's a really important first step. And supervised visitation is a really important part of that first step, right? Yes. So that there is some way to maintain that contact, to take that pressure off that survivor, mm-hmm. And then to sort of start again so that the kids can have a nonviolent environment to be raised in, and that perpetrator is held accountable, and the survivor can feel safe, can get on with her life, and can thrive.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Yeah. It's always good to know the healing.
At every stage of life. So the Centers for Disease Control tell us at every stage of life there are opportunities for healing.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. I hope that was helpful. And if anybody has any questions about supervised visitation, they can give us a call. They can go to our website. Mm-hmm. If you want to link it to this page when you go live.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, everyone.